Lightning like Steve McQueen. I'm in the fast lane when the light turns green. And I built tough, I ain't nothing but grit. Cause I made rugged blood, sweat, and spit. Yeah, like a horse I fly. Better push yourself in for a bumpy ride. I like to play hard, but I work harder. And I weather the storm cause I'm built stronger.
What is up, ladies and gentlemen? We are back. We are live. It is the Freight Coach Podcast, the top podcast in transportation, coming to you guys every single weekday, 8:30 a.m. Pacific, 10:30 Central, to provide some actual insight from transportation professionals for transportation professionals, ladies and gentlemen. There's no theory on any of this stuff. This is what we are actually applying in our business. And I'm just going to cut straight to the chase and bring my guest on right away, because we got a lot to talk about, from the realities of actually building real businesses inside of the transportation industry. So I got my man, the president of River City Logistics, Mr. Chris Brewer, back on the show. Chris, what is going on?
Man, everything. It's always good to talk shop with you. I'm always grateful to hop on here and to share the same viewpoints and just kind of talk the true realities of what we're facing here in the marketplace. So appreciate you having me on today, man.
No, dude, I that's the thing is, it's challenging. There's a lot of stuff that goes on out there, but like, it's not impossible. It's not impossible to build. And I think that, I've been saying this a lot here recently, man. I like 90% of the headlines and 90% of the information that's going on out there from media sources in this industry is fucking irrelevant to the overwhelming majority of people in this industry. Because if you polled 100 transportation companies, I would say 99.9% of them are going to say we need to add customers. All right, well, however the market's performing is kind of irrelevant if you need to add customers. You got to drown that noise out, and you got to just build a system up and develop business. And that's ultimately what I want to talk about with you today, because, man, you and your team, because I know that you won't take any credit. You are going to always bring your team into this. And, you and your team have built something really special at River City. Not only have you built a brokerage up, but you've built a trucking company up in unison with that because you started in like 2018. So it's like, it's been a challenging market essentially since you started this shit, man. There hasn't been one time outside of, maybe in 21 and 22 where you could say, hey, there's a lot of volume. You started in 2018 and 2019 when the market sucked. And it's just been a challenge this whole time from the outside, but you guys have made it happen.
Yeah, I sure wish I would have started when I got in the business in 2014, 2015. Freight was a lot easier back then. Mm-hmm. But I tell you what, building something of substance is very difficult. And, I get that question, people ask me, what was the one hardest thing about, starting your business, building your business? It's what I just said. It's really hard. It's really, really hard. And if you just show up and put your shoes on every day and walk out of your house and go to work and you have purpose and you have direction, as long as you have purpose and direction, you can find your way to the finish line. So, building our business, I had a really good understanding of customer acquisition, communication, and, just offering a really high level of service. But then executing that as you expand and you hire people. And then now you have a new issue, which is, how do I kind of bring about that winning mindset, that mentality, that culture? And so then now you're bringing people outside of like your family and friends, and quite a few of my family and friends work here at River City, but sticking true to what you know and what you've learned, and then being able to deliver on that, I think is what makes us stick out amongst our peers.
How are you out there? How do you teach somebody to build a book of business? I want to get your opinion on that, because just like everybody, I see all the stuff that's out there. I've personally fallen victim to the, I should only do this approach in sales, i.e. just email, nobody's answer, yada, yada, yada. And, so it's like, and again, full transparency with everybody. I get that exact same anxiety feeling before you start dialing. All right. I get that exact same thing, because you just never know what's going to be on the other end of the phone. But before I want to hear it from you though, man, how are you working with people on the realities of building a book of business from scratch?
Good question. I think there's many different layers and avenues to build a book. I mean, you and I, kind of come from the same cloth back in the 775. It was, here's a list, dial, 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 set your follow up, dial, 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 follow up email. And that's great. And then, there's the cold email outreach that works too. One thing that I know that we do differently than probably most people, we're strictly face to face. So I like to build those very deep rooted relationships, and I think you get a more authentic version of yourself, but B, your prospect when you're standing in front of them every 2 weeks or every 3 weeks. So right now, what we're doing is strictly face to face sales, face-to-face business relationships. Where, obviously the follow-up stuff comes in the background via email and phone call, but it's a lot harder to get an FU when you're standing in front of somebody's face and you've been there 3 or 4 times, and they can see you, then they know you're a real person. So that's how we're building our business, and it works for us. But like I said, there's many different avenues to accomplish that.
So are you just using, your like Google Maps or, lead generation software? And then are you calling and saying, hey, I'm going to stop by? Or are you just using Google or lead generation software and you're like, boom, there's this warehouse on 5th Street. I'm just going to go drop in cold?
Great question. A little bit of both. So what we've been able to do, we hired a really, really smart business analyst. So he's analyzing markets where we're lopsided, where we have a ton of inbound freight, but very little outbound. And so we're using that as our, quote unquote, our sales approach is, hey, I've got 50 truckloads coming into Green Bay. I've got 0 coming out. So we're going to try to utilize that same carrier, or in our case, our dedicated fleet. So we use that as our tagline of like, hey, we're in your area every single day. This is where we would like to get to. This is what we offer. So I will do like a cold approach to try to set up like a 2 to 3 day window where I know I'm going to be in that market knocking on doors. And the goal is to have 2 to 3 meaningful conversations every day. If I can have 2 to 3 really meaningful conversations over a 3 day window, I feel really good about converting about 40 to 50% of those, whereas conversion rate on phone and email is less than 5.
Yeah, it's from our perspective, we're kind of I'm doing a combination of like everything right now, right? So it's like I have, because I'm breaking down my day, because like we're in the complete building phase of this. I mean, this, we talk all the time, but like, we're in the complete building phase of this. We don't have we don't have much dedicated freight at all. Like we're getting there, but so it's like I'm kind of breaking it up into a 3-pronged approach where like me and my business partner are, like I'm sending out 50 emails every single day. I'm making 20 phone calls every single day, and I'm trying to set up multiple site visits a week, because I believe in that face-to-face as well, because I just think that at the end of the day, no one will ever understand how much your business can mean to somebody until you're like sitting there looking them in the eye, like you said. And I think that it just delivers a different level of commitment that most people aren't willing to do, especially from the brokerage space, man. Most brokers want to sit back. They want to send DMs on LinkedIn. They want to send emails, maybe make a couple of calls, and that's it. They don't want to get out there and show face, where I do the opposite, man. I want to show face. I want to do cold call the site visit, or I'm going to set it up to where, as because again, when you're bootstrapping a business, as finances become available in the budget, where it's going to be, hey, I'm going to fly to Las Vegas. I'm going to spend 48 hours. I'm going to set up 6 site visits. I'm going to go shake hands. Now I'm going to fly to Salt Lake City, and so on and so forth. So as the budget, as we make that, up, and we can add that, travel expense in, that's exactly what we're going to do. But, we're going to own our backyard in the meantime. My business partner's in Minneapolis. I'm here in Phoenix. We're just out there trying to add as many site visits as we possibly can. And I think that that's just a way that a lot of people need to focus on. It's not going to come from lead generation software, right? Like there's not going to be some AI email that is going to all of a sudden land all of this business out there. I think that what a lot of people need to focus in on is it's like, all right, step back and assess what can you do inside of your business? What can you afford? And I'm positioning this, you guys, for Chris, because Chris and his like they bootstrapped this shit. All right. There wasn't a large investor who's like, all right, Chris, you got 100 mil, go out there and do like this is all
Nice.
dollar in, dollar out for you. And it's like, and I'm at that position where it's like we're building everything up step by step here. And that's the reality for a lot of people, though. They might not have the travel budget to go out there and do that, but look at the route you're driving. I'm constantly have my head on a swivel when I'm driving around in Phoenix here, because I'm like, all right, boom, these guys have loading docks. I'm going to go stop in there. I'm going to write their name down. I'm going to try and set that up. And, again, if you can't afford a flight in a hotel, you can afford a tank of gas. You're already paying for it.
I love what you said. You said own your backyard. And I wish I would have learned this 10 years ago. I'm glad I know it now. But your business, your personal brand and your company's brand has value, especially in the communities that you are operating in. It's your job to share the message, right? It's our job as leaders and founders to make sure that people are cognizant of who we are and what we do. But like we are very philanthropic, and we give back to a lot of charitable organizations. We try not to miss any dinners or galas, and it has done great things for us. I think if you're a founder listening to this and you're still relatively, if you're in startup or go mode, the best thing you can do is invest in people in your backyard.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree with that, man. I think it's the most cost-effective option for you when it comes to, your customer acquisition, and that because that is an expense on your P&L, your customer acquisition cost, your CAC. I mean, that's massive, especially early on. And I think that so many people get into business and they don't have a strategy. They don't have a plan. Their strategy is, like, I'm just going to go find freight on the load board, or, I'm just going to go try and find another broker and see if there's because the co-broker thing is just out of control right now. But like, that's kind of their whole thing. And, I just want people to understand that it's like, hey, we got to go out there. We got to get resourceful for what you have. And I will rely on, I pay for lead generation software right now, right? I use a company called Seamless. I'm not associated or affiliated with them. I actually pay them every single year to use their product. But like, if you don't have it, Google and an Excel spreadsheet is an extremely effective tool to start tracking and building your lead list off of.
Absolutely. I mean, that's those are fundamental tools, like from day one, that you can use. It's really all about how you design and organize yourself as a salesperson, in my opinion. I mean, you can use the coolest, niftiest, shiniest tools and technology out there, but if you don't have the meat and potatoes, if the foundation isn't there for how do you prospect, okay? I think the one thing that I want people to take away from this, and I will always share this, you got to figure out what your ICP is. And if you're out here just spraying and praying, hoping to God that every, one out of every 50 people is going to pick up the phone that day, it's a hell of a lot easier for me to be an expert in like 3 different subjects or 3 different commodities or products, because when I'm talking to packaging customers and I'm talking about JIT and I'm talking about people doing large runs and 24/7 and dropping trailers, and like, that's a much different conversation than me just calling in saying, hey, I want to ship your freight. It's like, no, I've already been there and done that. I know what you do. How can I help you?
Yeah. No, and that's exactly how I really position myself when I'm on a call. Because even if I'm given the, where that they're customer routed or vendor routed, because like you're always going to hear some form of objection. I'll always have a follow-up question, right? So like if I'm calling a food products place, for example, where if they're like, oh, we're all customer routed, and I'm like, all right, well, can I just ask you a quick question about your guys' product? Do you guys go into like canneries, or are you guys go out to fresh production from here? What happens after it leaves? And then again, it's ironic how their tone almost switches. Like, actually, hold on a second, where it's like, I want to just kind of dig in a little bit deeper on what you're saying there, Chris, because I think so many people go in with surface level questions and all they get is surface level responses because it's clear that they are just calling for the sake of calling, where more times than not, I don't know if it's, because I know I don't sound that good on the phone, but like, I feel like the tone has almost shifted now to where people are more receptive when you get them on the phone, right? Because their voicemails are going to be a thing and yada, yada, yada. That's not like everybody I call, I have meaningful conversations with. But when I get somebody on the phone, I've almost found here as of late, Chris, that people are a lot more receptive to the phone call. And I think it has a lot to do with the fact that I am prepared to make that call, right? So it's like, if I'm going to call food shippers for today, for example, I'm going to research every single one of them before I call. I'm going to find out I'm going to know what their main product is or products are. And I'm going to see, do they have multiple facilities out there? And then I'm going to see, is it a food manufacturer? Is it a supplier? What does that look like? And I'm going to have questions for them after the introduction. So if, like, regardless of what they throw at me, I want to qualify them a little bit, because that's where you're not just going to call somebody and get their freight. Like, a lot of the people that I'm reaching out to right now, I'm qualifying them, right? Because I want to know, like, do you have full truckload? Because that's all we do. If you have LTL, that's not my jam. Full truckload, that's my jam. We can talk about that. Multi-drop, cool. Let's talk about that. But I need to kind of qualify them, because if they're 90% LTL, I don't want to keep following up with them, because that's just not for me.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that the battle is won before the phone call.
Yes.
Pure, like 100%. I can't say that louder. I mean, it can be on a mountain and scream it at the top of my lungs. But if you are not prepared, you essentially cost yourself the opportunity to have a meaningful conversation.
Yeah.
So it's like when people like us are on the phone, and the people that we employ in our organizations, they are well prepared for when that prospect picks up the phone. It's not one of those, oh shit moments, like, dang, they actually answered the phone. It's like, we know your business. We probably already service your competitors, and we know who you sell your product to, and we deliver freight in there as well. So it's more of a qualifying conversation right off the bat when you've done your homework and you know what they do. Even to take it a step further, like, I'll kind of take a dive into, what my prospect is, or who my prospect is. Where do they live? Do they have any hobbies listed on LinkedIn? Are they fans of certain sports teams? And you don't have to get super granular that way, but I mean, it could be a tool, from a prospecting perspective. You could use that to your advantage. And if you have, common interests, you like to fish, they like to fish, you could use that to your advantage as well.
Yeah. What are because we hear this a lot, rejections are part of it. What if somebody tells you, hey, remove me from your list, we're not working with you? What do you do in that instance?
That's a great question. If it's a prospect that I've done my homework on, and I know that we can add value because I perceive value for them being in my network, right? I think I'm gonna take this conversation out. I'm gonna interject and say something, then I'll come back to the question.
Yeah.
You have to be selfish enough to understand that there is business that you have to have for your network. I know most people might not think that way, but like, you have to be selfish enough to know, like, man, this certain supplier, it fits so well with my network, and I'm not going to let a million no's hinder me from continuing to follow up. Right. So if you qualify them well enough and you know that they're a good fit, like, I've got a prospect in my list, I'm going on 4 years now, and they're in my backyard, and I know that we can service them. I mean, hell, I see their product going down the road behind my office right here every day, probably about 15 truckloads a day. But you have to be selfish enough to know, like, I will do whatever it takes. I will respectfully follow up, but I like to use the term professionally persistent. If somebody tells me no, or, F off, don't call me again, I just kind of take the high road and just say, hey, look, it might not be a good time for you. Maybe I caught you on a bad day. I apologize for that. But the fact of the matter is, I don't know a lot of people that are better than me at what I do, and I want to bring that to your business.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, You know, I kind of, I look at it as I'll assess the situation if they're like, because I had a guy here, I think it was last week. I said my introduction, and his immediate response is, "No, we're not interested. No, I don't want you to follow up with me. You need to remove me from your list." And then he hung up the phone. And I'm like, at first I was kind of like, "Hey, fuck you," but then I was like, "All right, well, hold on a sec." I'm like, what happened prior to that? Because like, who fucking wore him out so bad that was his initial response? So obviously I take detailed notes on everybody I talk to, whatever they say. Obviously I'm not going to call that guy tomorrow. I'm going to probably let that one breathe, because I feel like, sometimes unless they remember me by name, they're like, "Chris, listen, man, I've already told you this before. I'm going to tell you this again. There is no opportunity. You need to just remove me from your list." And I'm like, all right, at that time, I'll probably just move on, because I don't want to get hung up. And I'm bringing this up because I feel like so many people get so hung up on that it stops them from making calls, or they get hung up on that maybe, right? Like somebody's dangling a carrot in front of you, but there's no actual opportunity there. And I think that's another major point of confusion for a lot of people when they're developing their book of business is they get hung up on too many maybes. They never qualified the person, but the person's kind of nice to them. And it's a lot easier to do that than go back out into the big scary world and get hung up on.
Yeah. Those types of conversations can also really kind of kill your vibe if you're in a good groove, and you've got to, sales is very much about rhythm in my perspective. So, when you're flowing and you're, the goal for me in the first set of in the very onset of the sales cycle is I just want information, right?
Yeah.
I'm purely trying to get information, because information allows me to put together a well-crafted approach. A well-crafted approach generally will garner you a conversation. Conversations then turn into opportunities, and opportunities turn into relationships. That's kind of the way that I've strung everything together. So yeah, I think that's spot on, man. I like what you said about getting hung up on it, because there are times, and I've even been victim of this myself. Somebody's a little nice to you, they'll take your phone call on a Friday, they'll shoot the shit with you for 15 minutes, but it's like there's nothing ever comes of it.
Yeah. No, man, I agree in that, and you got to identify that. I want to shift a little bit here for the last couple minutes of the show, and I want to talk about the financial literacy in business and making it through down markets, right? Because I think that that's probably been one of the greatest lessons that I've learned in business, and I'm still constantly learning on, is the financial health of my business, and how it's a completely different ball game between personal finances and business finances, and growing and scaling your company, but assessing your P&L all the time and finding out what's wasteful, what's not. Do we actually need this?
Yeah, I say this all the time. When we built our business, my partners and I, we were very, and still are very good freight people. Customer acquisition, back end operations, all that jazz, compliance, safety, claims, like we know how to handle that stuff really well. So we brought in our chief operating officer, Jacob Sharman, great addition to our team. And he's taught me a lot. I mean, he's taught me a lot about financial responsibility, and cutting out things that might look cute but aren't really good for you. I mean, that's what I think that's the hardest part, is like when you're taking a look at your overall, the health of your business, and you're looking at it from a 30-day window to a 90-day window to a 12-month window. There's a lot of things in there that we were doing that were, they looked cute, they were fun, a lot of extracurricular stuff was like, there was no return on that investment. And so understanding what's going to allow you opportunity to make money is a heck of a lot more important than trying to look cute and be cool. That's kind of what I would say with regard to like financial responsibility, because early on, like every dollar matters, man. Like if you're bootstrapping it, like I know you are, and we did it, every single dollar matters. It's so important to be smart.
How did you assess any of your financial partners out there. Cause like I had my guy James Courier on the show yesterday, and he's with Finlock, and they are a financial institution for, trucking companies and stuff like that. But like, how do you, from your position, how do you assess who to partner with, whether it's with a bank or, a factoring company? How do you sit down and actually break that down?
Yeah, so there's a set of qualifying questions that we like to ask our potential vendors. We've kind of built out this process over the last 2 years. So qualifying questions, if any one of those is answered incorrectly, then it's just generally not a good cultural fit for us. So you got to be true to what you want, right? I mean, especially in the finance space, like oftentimes people would see it as a one-way street, but it's really a two-way road. We're going to give something in return and vice versa. So when we were going through the process, I shared the story, see your sticker on the back of your monitor, our good friends over at Denim. When we decided to partner with them, it made a lot of sense. They were at a point in their business where they were really ready and equipped to take the next step. And it was a great decision for us. Dex actually was in Manhattan. I met with Sean and B and Brandon Caldwell. By the way, if you haven't met Brandon Caldwell, he's in your backyard. He's a good dude, man.
Yeah, he is. I like him a lot. Oh, did I lose you there?
No, I'm still here.
Oh, okay. So, yeah, I mean, with that though, man, like you're sitting down there. Cause I mean, I think like, again, the financial health of your organization, I think like right now, like really always, but like right now, especially, man, with the financial health of your company, because a lot of people are bootstrapping that, right? Like they are dollar in, dollar out. And I think that, to factor or not to factor is a big thing out there. And then, the personal guarantee on loans and stuff like that. Cause that was one of the hardest things that I learned, because like, man, I had 3 years of receivables to prove that like, hey, I got a real business here. But then the first business loan I took out, they're like, yeah, that's great and all, but like your business has never taken out a loan. You need to personally guarantee all of this stuff.
That was tough at first. So our story is a little bit unique. We went the agency route for the first 4 years and then spun off into our own MC. So being able to have gone through all those changes and picking our vendors, I've learned a lot. And I'm always fielding questions from people kind of asking me, hey, how did you do it? What'd you do? And I'm more than happy to help. When it comes to picking whether do you factor, you self-finance, when we decided to branch off and do our own thing, we knew that our number one issue, and I think it's going to be the number one issue across the board when you're going on your own, is credit with factoring companies. Like if you cannot get a line of credit and your carriers cannot factor their freight from you, you don't have carriers. Like that's the biggest hurdle that we saw. So, it made sense for us to go with Denim. You can pay your carriers as, 2-3 days, 5-6 days. So we were able to build lines of credit with almost, every major factoring company within about a 60-day window. And that was like monumental for us.
Mm-hmm. How as we're kind of wrapping up here, I mean, we're already at 30-minute mark, but how do you prepare somebody for that? What you're describing right there, the beginning of that, where you don't have established credit, and why you almost need to go with I don't think why you need to go with a factoring company at that beginning stages, because carriers won't work with you. And like, that's the first time anybody's like ever said that out there. Cause that's the biggest threat, I think, to a lot of brokerages is you don't have any credit. Therefore people won't work with you because of that.
Yeah. It was the largest hurdle. And I'll be completely honest with you. It almost cost us to lose our business. We moved over a book of 50 million plus in annual revenue overnight, which, we had a different plan. We just were kind of forced to do it overnight. Yeah. And so what we did, Jake Shireman, Macy Borman, our APAR lead, myself, we basically called in favors from everybody that we had made friends with being in the industry for, 3 or 4 years. And it took a lot of help, but I don't think we would have been able to do it without some of the connections that we had at the OTR Capitals of the world, the Triumphs of the world. Like we knew some pretty heavy hitters over there. and they vouched for us. And without having people in those positions to say, hey, give them a $500,000 line, or they're going to start you at 25K, and it's going to really handcuff you, and you're not going to be able to take your freight, and you're not going to be able to cover it with the carriers you want, and that's going to impact service levels and safety and all that jazz. So I would say we've written a pretty good book on how to kind of get through that, and I'll share that at a later date. But if you're exploring the idea of going out on your own, that is your largest hurdle by a mile.
Yep. Dude, yeah, we can do a whole other episode on that, man. And maybe we will at some point. But that's going to be it for today, man. Chris, I really appreciate you jumping on here. How does anybody reach out to you to find out more? Are you guys hiring? Where at? And how do they find out about that stuff?
Yeah, I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. I like to share, as much good sales and leadership content as I possibly can. Throw me a follow. I interact with almost everybody. For the most part, I respond to almost every DM, but I'm pretty friendly on that platform. You can find us at our website, rclogistics.com. We're always hiring truck drivers. We're always trying to expand our fleet and get a little bit more dynamic. And we're always looking at the best sales talent as well. So, Chris, good friend, I appreciate you. Yeah. I'm proud of you, brother.
I appreciate that, man. And hey, that's going to be it for today, you guys. We'll be back tomorrow. I think we got a solo show tomorrow, and I got guests coming on later this week. But as always, you guys, if you guys got value in what you heard, subscribe to the show, you guys. Share it out there to your network, because if you see value, your network's going to see value as well. I appreciate you guys. I love you guys, and we'll be talking to you soon.